And as we were talking about new technology and so on, when you started with Oracle, with the new commercial version and so on, it was like the bone of a relational database. It was the concept of a relational database was new, and nowadays we have a lot of new concepts too. Do you have anything that you want to share about this experience? Because all that we are living now with cloud stuff, with a lot of new different database services and so on. And do you have anything that you can correlate?
Well, I guess, let's see. One of the things about the early days was we had no idea if Oracle was going to be successful or not, right? So we had Sybase and Ingress and Oracle, all vying to be, the vendor of relational databases, right? It was really, when I got started, it was sort of just an idea that somebody had, built a program for. It was an interesting time, man. C, was really, when I started, C was just a book. There was a book that these guys, Kernighan and Ritchie, wrote. It was a definition of the language in a little small book. There was no, it wasn't well defined at all. And in fact, Oracle was one of the very first companies to use C as a language. And it was a differentiator for them because they were originally written in Fortran. And they, Larry, I guess, made the decision, hey, we need to be in a language that's more portable so that we can port to all these different operating systems that existed at that time. And it was a big advantage because they were able to move to all these platforms and could sell it pretty much on any hardware that anybody was running. But I mean, it was the Wild West back then. We had a customer, oh geez, I don't even know when it was, long time ago, let's just say that. That was running Oracle. Yeah, before you were born probably. But it was, they were running Oracle on an IBM mainframe on MVS. So there's not a lot of people that have had to work in that kind of environment, but I got a chance to do that one time.
I worked on it.
Did you?
Yeah.
Or are you doing it now?
I was a GCL guy. I was the guy that programmed the jobs and schedule the process to be executed on the mainframe.
Yeah.
I worked for 2 years.
Yeah. So anyway, we were involved in this project, and I had written some stuff in C. It was a user exit to SQL Forms of all things, and that was part of the product that we were selling into hospital systems. And these guys were running on MVS on a mainframe, running Oracle, which I only saw a couple of times in my career. But anyway, when we went to deploy this thing, they said, well, we don't have a C compiler. IBM said we don't have a C compiler. There is no C compiler for MVS. Such a thing doesn't exist. So we had to go to Oracle and ask them if they would loan us a copy of their C compiler so we could take it and put it on MVS on this IBM so that we could compile this code that I'd written so that we could get our program, our application to run. So that's kind of the world, that I grew up in. So it was very, very Wild West, I guess is the best way to describe it. And it's kind of that way now. We don't know who's going to win, right? We've got some major competitors. Oracle's, pretty far behind. But certainly Google, Microsoft, and AWS, are vying for, who's going to rule the world. And most likely all three of those guys will survive, and people will put data on. My view of the world is that it'll be a multi-cloud world. We'll have, and you're already starting to see the cloud vendors, rolling out their own products that will connect to another cloud. So Google, for example, has this thing called Omni that lets them run BigQuery on Google, but also on AWS. So you can have data spread across potentially all three of the major public clouds. And so I think it will be a multi-cloud world, but again, it's so early, we don't really know, who's going to win. I know, Google and Microsoft are growing much faster than Amazon. Amazon seems to be more focused on the low-hanging fruit because they were the first to get there. And so, when you talk to those guys, they throw around numbers like 90% of the databases are small and easy to handle, and we can just put them in RDS. And we're not so focused on the big, difficult stuff, But my view of the world, because I've got a set of blinders on that focuses me at big, difficult thing, things from in the database world, I kind of have the view that the guys that can handle the biggest, most complex things are the guys that are going to win, right? Because the easier stuff is probably going to follow the really hard stuff. So anyway, it's yet to be seen how how that's going to shake out. And so in that regard, it's very similar, right? We're just we don't know how it's going to turn out. So the best thing I think that we can do is like keep our eyes and ears open and be looking at the new stuff and try to discern, which one's going to be the best technology solution, right? Because those are the guys that are going to tend to win, although you also got to kind of keep an eye on the business aspect. One of the reasons Oracle won was not necessarily because they were the best, but they were very, very good at marketing, very, very good at selling. And so you got to keep an eye on both ends of it to really understand where it's going.
Right. This is your last comment. I would say that this is a good point that I will ask. Who's gonna win, the best or the most used?
Yeah, I think. It's yet to be seen. Google, I think, is like really, really smart guys and doing some really cool stuff. Traditionally, they've been kind of a science experiment, so they weren't really good at selling, particularly into enterprises. But Kerry and going over there makes a huge difference, right? And they're really a lot more focused on that now. So I think, from a sales standpoint, they're going to do a much, much better job. Microsoft's always been very good at selling to enterprises. And so they have an advantage in that regard, no doubt. Amazon was just first, right? They were the first. And so they have a huge head start on everybody. And so it's going to be difficult to catch up with those guys. So all of them have something in their favor, no doubt. And so, we'll see how it turns out. But in my view, probably all three of them are going to do well. And, probably most big enterprises are going to be spread across all three of them. They're not going to be focused on just one.
So, as you mentioned, let's keep with open eyes and see what's going to happen. Yeah.